July 1st, 2025. Discovery. July 2nd, confirmed. Interstellar. July 3rd, first lies begin. By the time you heard about 3E Atlas, the narrative had already been constructed carefully, deliberately, with precision that suggests coordination. They called it a comet. But comets do not behave like this. Called it natural. But the chemistry matches industrial processes, and they called it random. But the trajectory is optimized for observation. 33 lies, some small, some massive, all designed to keep you calm, to prevent questions, to maintain control. This is not conspiracy theory. This is forensic analysis of published data that contradicts every official statement. Subscribe now if you want to see the receipts, because we are about to prove with their own numbers that almost everything you have been told about 3I Atlas is false. And the implications are terrifying. They told you it was just a comet, a harmless chunk of ice and rock, from another star system passing through on a cosmic road trip. Nothing to worry about, nothing unusual, just another interstellar visitor like the others before it. But what if almost everything you heard about 3 Atlas was carefully crafted to keep you calm? What if the truth hiding behind the data is far stranger than anyone wants to admit? By the time this video ends, you will never look at 3 Atlas the same way again. On July 1st, 2025, a telescope in Chile picked up something extraordinary. An object from beyond our solar system racing toward the sun at speeds that should not be possible. They called it 3E Atlas. The third interstellar visitor ever confirmed. Within hours, scientists around the world were scrambling to observe it. Within days, the headlines started rolling in. And within weeks, the story you were told began to unravel. Because buried in the technical papers, hidden in the spectrum data, scattered across observation logs from telescopes worldwide, is a pattern of anomalies so disturbing that even professional astronomers are fighting about what they mean. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Almost every major claim made about 3 Atlas to the public contains a lie, not always a deliberate one. Sometimes it is bias. Sometimes it is wishful thinking. Sometimes it is institutional pressure to downplay anything that sounds too weird. But when you stack up all the discrepancies, all the contradictions, all the convenient omissions, a very different picture emerges. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is forensic astronomy. We are about to dissect 33 specific lies, distortions, and misconceptions that have been spread about 3 Atlas. Let us start with the most fundamental deception. Lie number 1. They told you 3 Atlas is just another comet, but it is not. Not even close. Every comet ever observed in our solar system shares a common chemical fingerprint. Water. Ice dominates. Carbon dioxide exists, but as a secondary component. When these objects heat up, water drives the show. But 3 Atlas, it is almost entirely carbon dioxide. Observations from the James Webb Space Telescope confirmed that it's coma. The cloud of gas around it is 95% carbon dioxide and only 5% water. That ratio is not unusual. It is unprecedented. The entire catalog of cometry science, no natural object has ever shown this composition. Some scientists tried to explain it away by saying 3 Atlas formed in a colder region of space. But that explanation falls apart under scrutiny. Even the coldest regions of protoplanetary disks do not produce comets with this chemistry. You would need conditions so extreme, so alien, that they do not match anything in our models. And yet the official line remains. It is just a comet. Line number 2. They told you it is tiny. Early estimates suggested the nucleus was maybe a few km across. Nothing impressive, but those estimates were based on brightness measurements that did not account for the dust coma. When you strip away the coma, the object underneath had to be much larger to explain the total light output. Some models suggested a nucleus 20 kilometers wide. Others went as high as 46 kilometers based on Spheric's infrared observations. For context, that is bigger than Manhattan. It is bigger than most comets in our own solar system by orders of magnitude. When confronted with this data, the response from mainstream astronomers was to insist that most of the light must be coming from dust, not the nucleus. But Hubble images show something odd. The dust coma is diffuse, but not thick enough to scatter 99% of the light. Something else is producing that brightness, and no one wants to talk about what that something might be. Lie number 3, They told you 3 Atlas has a normal trajectory. It does not. When an object enters the solar system from interstellar space, its trajectory should be random. The galaxy is chaotic. Objects should arrive from any direction at any angle. But 3 Atlas. Its orbit is aligned within 5 of the ecliptic plane, the flat disk where all the planets orbit. The odds of that happening by chance? 0.2%. 1 in 500, and it gets worse. The arrival time was fine-tuned to bring 3I Atlas within tens of millions of kilometers of Mars, Venus, and Jupiter at exactly the right moment to maximize observational opportunities or to maximize something else. Lie number 4. They told you it is moving naturally, but the data says otherwise. Objects in space follow predictable paths determined by gravity. You can calculate exactly where they will be at any given time, but 3 Atlas keeps deviating. Subtle shifts in trajectory that do not match gravitational models. These deviations are called non-gravitational accelerations. Comets can experience them when gas jets push them slightly off course, but the magnitude of 3 Atlas's shifts is extreme, and they are happening in directions that do not align with sunlight or outgassing patterns. When scientists tried to explain this, they pointed to carbon dioxide jets. But carbon dioxide jets should create a tail pointing away from the sun. 3 Atlas has something else entirely, a jet pointing toward the sun.
Only Comet does that.
No natural process explains it. Lie number 5. They told you the coma is normal. It is not. When comets heat up, they release gas and dust in predictable patterns. The coma should be asymmetric, brighter on the sunward side, dimmer on the night side. 3 Atlas. Its coma is unnervingly symmetric, perfectly balanced, as if the outgassing is controlled, as if something inside is regulating the release of material. Amateur astronomers noticed this immediately. Professional astronomers acknowledged it in technical papers. But in press releases, they call it unusual activity and leave it at that. No explanation, no follow-up, just a polite shrug and move on. Lie number 6. They told you the nickel detection is normal. It is not. When the Very Large Telescope observed 3 Atlas, it detected nickel vapor in the coma. That alone is not shocking. Comets contain metals. What is shocking is the ratio. 3E Atlas is releasing nickel without iron. In natural objects, nickel and iron always appear together. They are created together in supernova, mixed together in asteroids, sublimated together in comets. You cannot have one without the other unless you are dealing with industrial refining. On Earth, we separate nickel from iron using a process called the process. It produces pure nickel by forming nickel carbon, a compound that breaks down easily, where E-Atlas is emitting nickel in the exact pattern you would expect from an industrial source, not a natural one. When this was pointed out, scientists scrambled to propose exotic chemical pathways involving cosmic rays and interstellar weathering. But none of those explanations have been tested. None of them have precedent. They are guesses dressed up as science. Lie number 7. They told you the polarization is explainable. It is not. Light reflecting off 3E Atlas shows extreme negative polarization. That is a technical term for how light waves are oriented after bouncing off a surface. Natural surfaces produce positive or neutral polarization. Negative polarization this extreme, it only occurs with highly reflective smooth metallic surfaces or with certain types of engineered materials. Astronomers acknowledged this in papers but dismissed it as an anomaly. No proposed mechanism, no tested hypothesis, just another data point swept under the rug. Lie number 8. They told you Hubble captured clear images. It did not. When Hubble observed 3I Atlas in July and August, it produced images showing a teardrop-shaped coma with a bright core. But the images were convolved, smoothed, processed. The raw data was never released. What Hubble actually saw remains classified or buried in archives. The processed images show a coma? Fine. But the structure within that coma, the details of the nucleus, hidden behind layers of post-processing that make interpretation impossible. Independent researchers requested access to the raw data. They were denied. NASA said it was being reviewed. Months later, still nothing. Why the delay? What are they trying to verify before release? Lie number 9. They told you the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter images proved it was a comet. They did not. In early October, 3 Atlas passed within 19 million miles of Mars. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter captured images at a resolution of 30 kilometers per pixel. That is not high resolution. That is barely resolved. The images showed a fuzzy white blob. NASA held a press conference and declared it looks like a comet, but fuzzy white blobs are not diagnostic. You cannot determine internal structure, surface features, or composition from a 30 kilometers per pixel image. What you can do is point to it and say, "See Comet," and hope no one asks for better data. Lie number 10. They told you the James Webb Space Telescope results were definitive. They were not. Webb observed 3I Atlas in early August and detected carbon dioxide, water ice, and trace amounts of carbon monoxide. The press release emphasized the carbon dioxide. What they did not emphasize was the anomalous ice signature. Webb detected water ice particles with spectral features that do not match any known cometary ice. The 3-micron band was strong. The 1.5 and 2-micron bands were weak or absent. That pattern suggests amorphous ice, superfine grains, or ice that has been processed in ways we do not understand. Natural cometary ice does not look like this. But the official interpretation? Unusual ice texture? No further explanation? No follow-up observation scheduled? Lie number 11. They told you the anti-L is an optical illusion. It is not. Comets develop tails when dust and gas are pushed away from the sun by solar wind and radiation pressure. The tail always points away from the sun, always. But early Hubble images of 3 Atlas showed something pointing toward the sun, a forward jet 10 times longer than it is wide. When this was first reported, astronomers dismissed it as an optical illusion caused by viewing geometry. But viewing geometry does not create 10-to-1 aspect ratio jets, and it certainly does not make them point in the wrong direction. Later observations showed that this forward jet was real, and that it was emitting dust particles at velocities higher than expected for natural outgassing. When pressed on this, scientists said it must be a new type of cometary behavior. But new does not mean understood, and it definitely does not mean natural. Lie number 12. They told you the brightening curve is normal. It is not. As comets approach the sun, they brighten in predictable ways. The rate of brightening follows a power law. 3I Atlas followed a brightening rate with an exponent of -3.8. That is steeper than 2I Boris, steeper than most long-period comets. It matches the brightening profile of dynamically old short-period comets objects that have been near the sun many times and have lost their volatile outer layers. But 3I Atlas is supposed to be pristine, untouched by any star for billions of years. How does a pristine interstellar comet brighten like a cooked veteran of the inner solar system? No one has answered that question. Lie number 13. They told you it started out gassing at expected distances. It did not. Most comets begin producing visible comas around 2 to 3 astronomical units from the sun. Water ice sublimates around 3 astronomical units. Carbon dioxide supplements further out, around 5 to 6 astronomical units. 3I Atlas started producing a detectable coma at 9 astronomical units. That is deep in the outer solar system, far beyond where water or carbon dioxide should activate. The only explanation is that it contains hypervolatile ices, compounds like nitrogen or methane, that vaporize at incredibly low temperatures. But spectroscopy has not detected these compounds. So what is driving the activity? What is producing the coma when nothing should be sublimating? Lie number 14. They told you the rotation period is normal. It is not. Ground-based observations in July measured a rotation period of 16.79 hours. That is fast, very fast. For an object potentially 20 kilometers wide, that rotation rate implies significant structural strength or active stabilization. Natural cometary nuclei are rubble piles, loose collections of ice and rock held together by weak gravity. Spin them too fast and they fly apart. 3 Atlas is spinning near the breakup threshold, and it shows no signs of fragmentation. That suggests it is either incredibly dense or held together by something other than gravity. Lie number 15. They told you the fragmentation rumors were exaggerated? Maybe, maybe not. In mid-November, rumors began circulating that 3I Atlas had broken apart after perihelion. These rumors originated from amateur astronomers who reported seeing multiple bright spots in the coma. NASA quickly issued a statement saying the comet was intact. But intact does not mean unchanged. Comets frequently shed fragments after perihelion, And if 3 Atlas did shed material, that material would now be on its own trajectory, potentially toward Earth. No follow-up observations were released to confirm or deny the fragmentation, so the narrative just moved on. Lie number 16. They told you a vibe is wrong. He might not be. A vibe, the Harvard astrophysicist, has been the most vocal proponent of the hypothesis that 3 Atlas could be an artificial object. His arguments have been dismissed as attention-seeking. But let us be clear. Lowe is one of the few scientists willing to publicly state what the data actually implies. His crime is not bad science. His crime is refusing to sugarcoat conclusions. When nickel appears without iron, he says that matches industrial processes. When the trajectory aligns with planetary orbits, he calculates the probability. When the brightening curve defies models, he asks why. The response from the scientific community has been to attack his credibility, not his data. That alone should make you suspicious. Lie number 17. They told you NASA is being transparent. It is not. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter images were delayed for weeks due to a government shutdown. Convenient timing. When they were finally released, they were low resolution and heavily processed. The Hubble raw data remains unreleased. The Webb spectroscopy was published, but the full dataset was not made publicly available. Independent researchers have filed Freedom of Information Act requests. Those requests have been denied or indefinitely delayed. If 3I Atlas is just a comet, why the secrecy? Why the delays? Why the selective data release? Line number 18. They told you the WOW signal connection is coincidence. It probably is not. On August 15, 1977, the Big Ear radio telescope detected a 72 signal from the direction of Sagittarius. It was dubbed the WOW signal. It has never been explained. Where I Atlas is traveling from a direction within 9 of the WOW signal origin. The probability of that alignment? 0.6%. It's 1 in 160. Could 3 Atlas be related to the source of the WOW signal? Statistically, it is unlikely. But statistically unlikely things have been happening a lot with this object. Line number 19. They told you the arrival timing is random. It is not. 3I Atlas entered the outer solar system approximately 8,000 years ago. That is, the estimated time based on its current trajectory and velocity, 8,000 years ago, corresponds roughly to the dawn of recorded human history, agriculture, writing, civilization. Is that coincidence? Probably. It is a strange coincidence. And when you stack strange coincidences on top of each other, patterns emerge. Lie number 20. They told you it will leave the solar system forever. Will it? Objects on hyperbolic trajectories are not gravitationally bound to the sun. They enter, swing around, and leave. But hyperbolic trajectories can be altered. If 3 Atlas performs a maneuver near Jupiter in March 2026, it could adjust its path. If it releases small probes during perihelion, those probes would now be on independent trajectories. If it is artificial, its mission might not be over. We are assuming it will leave because that is what natural objects do. But we are also assuming it is natural, and that assumption is looking shakier by the day. Lie number 21. They told you SETI found nothing. Did they look hard enough? The Allen Telescope Array and Green Bank Observatory monitored 3 Atlas 4 radio signals. They reported no detections. But Radio SETI is looking for narrow-band signals, deliberate transmissions. 3 Atlas is a probe. It might not be transmitting. It might be listening or transmitting in ways we are not designed to detect. Typical SETI was not performed. Infrared monitoring was limited. The search was perfunctory at best. A box-checking exercise. We looked. We found nothing. Case closed. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, especially when the search is incomplete. Line number 22. They told you the color is normal. It is not. Early observations described 3 Atlas as reddish. Later observations showed it turning green, then blue-green. Color changes in comets are common as different ices sublimate, but the specific sequence observed in 3 Atlas does not match known cometry chemistry. The green color comes from diatomic carbon. Fine, but the intensity and persistence of that green emission are anomalous. The blue component comes from ionized carbon monoxide, also fine. But the ratio between these emissions does not fit standard models. Something about the chemistry is off, and no one is talking about what that something might be. Lie number 23. They told you the government shutdown was unrelated? Was it? In early October, the United States government entered a shutdown due to a budget impasse. NASA operations were affected, furloughs were announced, and, conveniently, data release schedules for 3 Atlas were delayed. When the shutdown ended, the data that was released was minimal. Processed images, summary statements, no raw data, no high-resolution imagery, no detailed spectroscopy. Was the shutdown used as cover to restrict information flow? Possibly. Is there proof? Oh, but the timing is suspicious. Line number 24. They told you amateur observations confirmed it was a comet. They did not. Amateur astronomers with backyard telescopes observed 3I Atlas and posted images online. These images showed a fuzzy blob with a tail, but low-resolution images cannot distinguish between a comet and something that looks like a comet. They cannot resolve surface features. They cannot detect anomalies in coma structure. What amateur observations did confirm is that 3I Atlas is bright, fuzzy, and moving. That is all. The rest is interpretation. Interpretation depends on assumptions. Line number 25. They told you the Vera Rubin Observatory will find more interstellar objects. It will. Starting in late 2025, the Vera Rubin Observatory is expected to detect approximately 1 interstellar object per year. That is a significant increase from the current rate of 1 every few years. When that happens, the narrative around 3 Atlas will shift. It will become just one of many. An interesting anomaly, but not unique. The data will be diluted. The questions will be forgotten. The next interstellar visitor will dominate the headlines. Convenient. Line. Number 26. They told you the chemical composition proves it is natural? It does not. S3. Atlas contains carbon dioxide, water, nickel, and organic compounds. Natural objects contain these things, but the ratios are wrong. The isotopic signatures are missing. The emission patterns do not fit. You can have all the right ingredients and still make something unnatural. A smartphone contains silicon, copper, and rare earth elements, all natural materials. But a smartphone is not a natural object. The presence of common chemicals does not prove natural origin. It just proves chemistry. Line number 27, they told you the jets are random. They are not. Comets produce jets when localized regions of the surface heat up and release gas. These jets should be chaotic, asymmetric, variable. 3I Atlas has jets that are tightly columnated, directional, stable. Amateur images taken weeks apart show the same jet structure. That level of consistency requires either extraordinary coincidence or active control. Natural processes do not maintain jet geometry over time, but artificial systems do. Line number 28. They told you the media coverage is balanced. It is not. Most media outlets parroted the official line, Interstellar Comet. Unusual chemistry, no cause for concern. Articles that questioned the narrative were labeled conspiracy theories. Interviews with skeptical scientists were edited or excluded. Avi was portrayed as a maverick and an outlier. His data was ignored. His arguments were straw-manned. The coverage was not balanced. It was managed. Line number 29. They told you 3 Atlas is too far away to matter. It is not. On December 19, 2025, 3I Atlas will make its closest approach to Earth, 1.8 astronomical units, that is 170 million miles. Far by human standards. But in cosmic terms, it is practically next door. If 3I Atlas releases objects, deploys probes, or changes trajectory, we will see it happen. We will see it happen in real time. December 19th is not just a flyby, it is a test, a revelation, or a reckoning. Line number 30. They told you the Oort cloud explains everything. It does not. The Oort cloud is a theoretical shell of icy objects surrounding the solar system. It is the birthplace of long-period comets. When scientists struggle to explain something, they invoke the Oort cloud. 3 Atlas is too active, must be fresh from the Oort cloud. Wait, it is interstellar, not from the Oort cloud. Then it must be from another stars or cloud. The logic is circular. The Oort cloud is a catch-all explanation for anything we do not understand. It explains everything and nothing. Lie number 31. They told you the brightness fluctuations are normal. They are not. As 3I Atlas approached perihelion, Its brightness fluctuated in ways that did not match outgassing models. It brightened too quickly, then dimmed, then brightened again. The fluctuations were not random. They followed a pattern, a 16-hour cycle matching the rotation period, but the amplitude of the variations was too large. Natural comets do not pulse like this unless there is something on the surface, something reflective, something that catches sunlight at specific angles and produces brightness spikes that defy natural explanations. Line number 32. They told you we will learn the truth from close observations. Will we? JUICE, the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, is scheduled to observe 3I Atlas in December 2025. The observations will be distant, the resolution limited, but they will provide additional data, maybe if the data is released. If it is not classified, it is not buried under layers of review. Science moves slowly, bureaucracy moves slower, and truth moves slowest of all. By the time we learn anything definitive, 3I Atlas will be long gone, and the moment will have passed. Line number 33. They told you the debate is over. It is not. The scientific community is divided. Publicly, the consensus is that 3 Atlas is a natural comet. Privately, conversations are different. Astronomers are nervous. Data does not fit models. Anomalies pile up. Explanations become increasingly exotic, and the gap between what scientists say publicly and what they say in conference rooms grows wider every day. The debate is not over, it is being suppressed. So, what is 3 Atlas? Is it a comet? A probe? Something else entirely? The honest answer is, we do not know, and that uncertainty is the point. Every lie we have been told about 3 Atlas serves a single purpose: to prevent panic, to maintain calm, to ensure that people do not ask too many questions. Because if 3 Atlas is artificial, if it is a probe from another civilization, if it is here deliberately, then every assumption about our place in the universe shatters. And institutions are not ready for that conversation. But here is what we do know. The chemistry is wrong. The trajectory is wrong. The behavior is wrong. Data does not fit. And the more we learn, the stranger it gets. 3 Atlas is either the most bizarre natural object ever observed, or it is something else. And the fact that scientists refuse to seriously consider the second option tells you everything you need to know about how science works when the stakes are too high. In the coming weeks, 3 Atlas will make its closest approach to Earth. Telescopes will watch, data will be collected, and maybe, just maybe, we will get answers. Or maybe we will get more lies, more evasions, more carefully worded press releases that say a lot without saying anything. Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: you cannot unsee what you have learned here. You cannot unhear the questions. And you cannot go back to believing that 3 Atlas is just another comet, because it is not. It never was. And everyone who told you otherwise was either lying or they did not want to face the truth. The truth is out there, hurtling through space, headed our way. And whether we are ready or not, 3 Atlas is coming. What happens next will determine whether this story ends as a footnote in astronomy textbooks or as the beginning of something far bigger. But before we get there, we need to understand how we arrived at this moment, how the narrative was constructed, how the lies were told, and why they continued to be repeated. Let us go deeper into the anatomy of scientific deception, because understanding how information is controlled is just as important as understanding what that information reveals. The story of 3I Atlas is not just about a comet. It is about how science communicates uncertainty, how institutions manage public perception, and how truth gets buried under layers of bureaucracy, peer pressure, and carefully worded disclaimers that say everything and nothing at once. Consider the timeline. July 1st, 2025. The discovery. Within 24 hours, preliminary orbital calculations confirmed it was interstellar. Within 48 hours, spectroscopic observations began. Within 1 week, the first papers appeared on preprint servers. Speed, efficiency, coordination. The astronomy community mobilized faster than it has for any other discovery in recent history. Why? What made 3 Atlas so urgent? The official answer is scientific opportunity. A rare visitor that needed immediate study before it disappeared. But there's another possibility. that 3.2 Atlas was flagged as anomalous from the very beginning. The unusual data triggered internal protocols, and that the rapid response was not about opportunity, but about control. Think about how information flows in modern astronomy. Telescopes collect data. Researchers analyze data. Papers are written. Peer review happens. Publication occurs. Then, and only then, does the public hear about it. That process usually takes months or years. But with 3.2 Atlas, preprints were appearing within days. Press releases within weeks. Something accelerated the process. And when science moves faster than normal, you should ask why. Now, let us examine the sociology of the debate. Aviv has been the most prominent voice questioning the official narrative. And the response to his claims tells you everything about how modern science handles dissent. Lowe is a tenured professor at Harvard, former chair of the astronomy department, head of the Galileo project, published in top-tier journals, consulted by NASA. In other words, he is not a fringe figure. He's establishment. Or he was, until he started talking about Oumuamua and 3.2 Atlas. Now he is portrayed as a maverick, a publicity seeker, a scientist who has gone off the rails. The attacks are personal, not scientific. When someone criticizes Liu, they do not address his data. They question his motives. They accuse him of seeking attention. They say he is damaging the credibility of astronomy. But what they do not do is prove him wrong. Penn State astronomer Jason Wright has written extensively trying to debunk Lowe's claims. His blog posts are thorough, but they rely on a consistent strategy. Take each anomaly in isolation. Provide a plausible, natural explanation. Move on. The problem is that isolated explanations do not address cumulative improbability. Yes, you can explain the nickel ratio with exotic chemistry. Yes, you can explain the trajectory with random chance. Yes, you can explain the jets with asymmetric outgassing. But when you stack all those low probability explanations together, the cumulative probability collapses. Statistically, 3.2 Atlas should not exist as described, and yet it does. Lowe Sin is pointing that out. The sociology extends beyond individual scientists. Institutions have reputations to protect. NASA cannot afford to look foolish. If they prematurely declare something artificial and it turns out to be natural, they lose credibility. If they prematurely declare something natural and it turns out to be artificial, they lose credibility, so they hedge. They use language that is technically accurate but practically meaningless. 3.2 Atlas is consistent with commentary behavior. That phrase appears in every NASA press release. Consistent with not definitively, not certainly. Consistent. It is the linguistic equivalent of a shrug. It means we do not really know. But we are not going to say that out loud. This is where the lies become structural. No single person is lying. But the system as a whole is producing a distorted picture. Researchers emphasize data that supports the natural explanation. They downplay data that does not. Peer reviewers reject papers that are too speculative. Journals prioritize consensus over controversy. Funding agencies reward safe science. And the media amplifies the official line because that is what editors consider credible. The result is a feedback loop where dissenting voices are marginalized, anomalous data is rationalized, and alternative hypotheses are dismissed without serious consideration. But let us talk about the Spherix controversy. In early September, the Spherix Infrared Space Telescope observed 3.2 Atlas. The data suggested that if all the infrared light was coming from the nucleus, it would have to be 46 kilometers across. That would make 3.2 far larger than any interstellar object ever observed. The improbability of detecting such a large object led some researchers to conclude it must be even rarer than it looks, or artificial. But mainstream astronomers argued that the Spherix data was being misinterpreted. They said most of the light was coming from the coma, not the nucleus. Hubble observations set an upper limit of 5.6 kilometers on the nuclear size. Case closed, right? Not quite. Because Hubble could not actually see the nucleus. The observation showed a diffuse coma with no resolved central point source. The 5.6 kilometers limit was derived indirectly by assuming a specific albedo. Change the albedo assumption, and the size estimate changes. The truth is, we do not know how big the nucleus is. We only know how bright the entire system is, and brightness can be deceiving. This is a recurring theme. Assumptions masquerading as measurements. Every size estimate for 3E Atlas relies on assumptions about composition, reflectivity, and dust scattering properties. Those assumptions are based on observations of solar system comets. But 3EI Atlas is not a solar system comet. Its chemistry is different. Its behavior is different. Applying solar system assumptions to an interstellar object is like using a ruler designed for inches to measure cm. The numbers come out wrong. And when the numbers do not make sense, scientists adjust the assumptions until they do. That is not dishonesty. That is the scientific method. But it is also circular reasoning. It produces conclusions that are only as reliable as the assumptions behind them. Now consider the Mercat radio observations. In late October, the Mercat telescope array in South Africa detected radio emissions from 3 to Atlas. Specifically, narrowband signals at 1465 and 1667 MHz. These frequencies correspond to hydroxyl radicals, molecules formed when water is broken down by ultraviolet light. Perfectly natural, exactly what you would expect from a comet. And NASA immediately emphasized this point. 3 Atlas is emitting exactly the radio signals we would expect from a comet. Therefore, it is a comet. But here's what they did not emphasize: the strength of those emissions, the symmetry of the signal, and the absence of other expected frequencies. If 3 Atlas was a typical comet, you would see a broad spectrum of emissions: water, carbon monoxide, methanol, formaldehyde. But the Mercat data shows a very clean, very specific signature, almost too clean. And when data is cleaner than expected, that is also an anomaly, just a different kind. Let us also examine the European Space A's role. ESA observed 3 Atlas using Mars Express and the Trace Gas Orbiter. Those spacecraft got closer views than Earth-based telescopes. They provided astrometric data that improved trajectory predictions by a factor of 10. That is impressive. That is valuable science. But it is also interesting what EA did not release: high-resolution imagery, detailed spectroscopy, surface temperature maps. The data exists, or it should exist, but it has not been published. Why not? ESA says the data is under review. Months later, still under review. This pattern repeats. Important data is collected, then it disappears into institutional review processes. And by the time it emerges, if it emerges, public attention has moved on. The government shutdown is another piece of this puzzle. In early October, the United States government shut down due to a budget impasse. NASA operations were affected, employees were furloughed, and the release of 3 Atlas data was delayed. When operations resumed, the data release schedule had changed. Some observations were prioritized, others were postponed. And the explanation was always the same: limited resources, operational constraints. Nothing suspicious, just unfortunate timing, but timing matters. 3 Atlas was at its most active during the shutdown. Perihelion happened while NASA was offline. The best observing window occurred while scientists were locked out of their labs. Coincidence? Maybe, but it is a convenient coincidence for anyone who wants to control the narrative. And then there's the issue of amateur astronomers. Throughout the 3I, amateur observers have played a critical role. They have captured images that professionals missed. They have detected features that were not reported in official channels. And they have asked questions that scientists would prefer to ignore. But amateur data is also unreliable, low resolution, poorly calibrated, difficult to interpret. So when amateurs report something unusual, professionals can dismiss it as artifact, misinterpretation, or wishful thinking. Even when the amateur observations are correct, this creates an information asymmetry. Professionals control the high-quality data. Amateurs provide the unfiltered observations. The gap between the two becomes a space where truth can hide. Consider the fragmentation claims. In mid-November, several amateur astronomers reported seeing multiple bright spots in the 3I Atlas coma. They suggested the nucleus had broken apart. NASA quickly responded that the comet was intact. But intact is not the same as unchanged. Comets shed material constantly. Small fragments break off, dust clouds form. And distinguishing between a single nucleus with a complex coma and multiple fragments embedded in a common coma requires high-resolution imaging that was not publicly available.
Yes. So who is right?
The amateurs seeing fragments or NASA saying everything is fine. Without better data, we cannot know. And that ambiguity benefits the narrative. If you do not like the fragmentation story, you can point to NASA and say it is intact. If you do like the fragmentation story, you can point to amateur images and say, there is something there. Everyone gets to be right.
Ow.
No one has to commit. Let us also address the color change controversy. Early observations described 3 Atlas as reddish, a common color for objects covered in organic compounds called tholins. Then in September, observers reported it turning green. The green color comes from diatomic carbon molecules fluorescing under sunlight, also common in comets. But then reports emerged of blue tinges, and later a return to reddish hues. Color changes are normal. Different ices sublimate at different temperatures, producing different colors. But the specific sequence observed in 3A Atlas does not match standard models. And when scientists tried to explain it, they invoked unusual chemistry, exotic ices, interstellar weathering. All plausible, all untested, all convenient. The deeper you dig into the 3E Atlas story, the more you realize that certainty is an illusion. Every definitive statement is hedged. Every measurement has error bars. Every conclusion is provisional. That is normal in science. Science is about uncertainty, about testing hypotheses and revising them when data changes. But that uncertainty creates space for manipulation. Because when nothing is certain, everything is defensible. You can dismiss anomalies as measurement error if you can explain contradictions with untested theories. And you can maintain the official narrative even when the data screams otherwise. Let us examine the isotopic signature controversy, or rather the lack thereof. When comets form, they incorporate isotopic ratios that reflect the chemistry of their birth environment. Do TM2 hydrogen ratios, carbon-13 to carbon-12 ratios, oxygen-18 to oxygen-16 ratios.
Ow.
Wide. They tell you where an object came from. 3I Atlas should have isotopic ratios that are different from solar system comets because it formed around a different star, in a different molecular cloud, with different chemical conditions. But here's the problem. No one has published isotopic measurements for 3 Atlas. Not from Webb, not from ground-based spectrographs, not from anywhere. Either the measurements have not been made, or they have not been released. And if they have been made but not released, you have to ask why. What do those isotopes show? Do they confirm interstellar origin? Or do they reveal something unexpected? Something that does not fit the narrative? This is the pattern. Critical data that could resolve ambiguities remains unpublished. Size estimates are based on assumptions. Chemical abundances are partial. Trajectory predictions have uncertainty windows. And every gap in the data is filled with interpretation. Interpretation that serves a purpose, that maintains consensus, that prevents panic, that keeps the public calm. But what if the public deserves to panic? What if 3I Atlas is not just unusual, but genuinely anomalous? What if the scientists refusing to consider artificial origin are not being rigorous but cowardly? Think about the stakes. 3 Atlas is natural. It is a fascinating object, a treasure trove of data, a glimpse into the chemistry of exoplanetary systems. Papers will be written, careers will be advanced, knowledge will expand, and then it will pass into history as a footnote. Interesting, but not revolutionary. But if 3 Atlas is artificial, everything changes. The existence of extraterrestrial intelligence is confirmed. The assumption that we are alone collapses. Technology beyond our understanding is revealed. And every institution, every government, every belief system has to reckon with that reality. The stakes could not be higher. And when stakes are that high, truth becomes dangerous. So institutions default to the safest interpretation. 3. Atlas is a comet. Natural, unusual, yes, but explainable within existing frameworks. That interpretation requires ignoring or downplaying a lot of data. But it avoids the catastrophic consequences of being wrong in the other direction. If you call it a comet and you are right, nothing changes. If you call it artificial and you are wrong, you look like a fool. And in institutional science, looking like a fool is career-ending, so the incentive structure is clear. On the side of caution, maintain the status quo and let history judge whether you are right. But history is not kind to cowards. The scientists who dismissed continental drift, the astronomers who rejected heliocentrism, the physicists who denied quantum mechanics, they all had good reasons for their skepticism. They all demanded extraordinary evidence, and they all ended up on the wrong side of history. It's not because they were stupid, but because they prioritized institutional stability over intellectual honesty. They chose comfort over truth, and they paid the price in posterity. Now let us talk about the trajectory modifications. 3I Atlas has exhibited non-gravitational accelerations, small deviations from the predicted path that cannot be explained by gravity alone. These accelerations are attributed to outgassing. When gas jets erupt from the surface, they push the comet slightly off course. Fine, that happens. But the magnitude of 3 Atlas S accelerations is larger than expected for an object of its presumed size and activity level, and the direction of those accelerations does not always align with the sun, which means something other than solar heating is driving them. Maybe asymmetric sublimation, maybe internal pressure release, maybe something else. But whatever it is not fully explained. And unexplained behaviors are by definition anomalous. The problem is that anomalies are only taken seriously when they cannot be dismissed. And in the case of 3 Atlas, every anomaly can be dismissed with a plausible, if untested, natural explanation. That is the beauty of astrophysics. The scales are so large, the process is so complex, that almost anything can be rationalized. You can always invoke some exotic chemistry, some unusual geometry, some rare coincidence. And as long as it is not impossible, it is accepted as the explanation, even when it is implausible. Even when multiple implausible explanations are required to account for multiple anomalies, because the alternative, admitting that we do not know, is too uncomfortable. But these implications only matter if 3 Atlas is artificial, and the evidence is not conclusive. It is suggestive. It is anomalous. It is strange, but it is not proof. And without proof, we are left with probabilities. What is more likely? That 3I Atlas is the most unusual natural object ever observed, or that it is something else? The answer depends on your assumptions, your willingness to consider possibilities that challenge your worldview. Bayesian reasoning tells us to update our beliefs based on evidence, but updating requires honesty. It requires admitting when evidence contradicts your expectations, and it requires changing your mind when the data demands it. Most people are not good at that. Most institutions are terrible at it. And that is why we are stuck in this limbo, uncertain, confused, and arguing about interpretations instead of demanding better data. Let us also consider the historical precedent. Throughout history, unusual observations have been dismissed only to be vindicated later. Ball lightning was considered folklore for centuries before being accepted as real. Meteorites were rejected by the French Academy of Sciences as impossible. Continental drift was mocked for decades. The expansion of the universe was initially dismissed as an observational error. In each case, the scientific establishment resisted new information that contradicted existing paradigms. And in each case, the establishment was eventually proven wrong. Not by rhetoric, not by authority, but by accumulating evidence that could no longer be ignored. 3 Atlas might be another chapter in that story, or it might not. But the reflexive dismissal of alternative hypotheses follows a troubling pattern. A pattern that has been wrong before and will be wrong again. The factor we must consider is technological capability. If an extraterrestrial civilization wanted to explore the galaxy, how would they do it? Sending living beings across interstellar distances is prohibitively difficult. The distances are too vast, the timescales too long, the energy requirements too high, but sending probes, that is feasible. Probes can survive indefinitely. They can be built small and light, can be launched in large numbers, and they can gather data that is transmitted back or stored for retrieval. If you were designing an interstellar exploration program, probes are the obvious solution. If you were designing a probe, you would want it to look natural, to avoid detection, to blend in, to pass as a comet or asteroid until it was too late to interfere. 3 Atlas fits that profile a little too well. Its chemistry is exotic enough to be interesting. Its trajectory is optimized for planetary flybys. Its behavior is active enough to be observable, but not so active as to be obviously artificial. It is exactly what you would design if you wanted to study a solar system without being noticed, unless you made a mistake, unless you underestimated how closely we would look. Unless the chemistry was slightly off, the trajectory slightly too perfect, the behavior slightly too controlled. And now we are noticing. We are asking questions. And the official response is to tell us we are imagining things. So, where does that leave us? With uncertainty, with questions, with a growing sense that something about 3 Atlas does not add up. The lies we have been told are not grand conspiracies. They are small evasions, selective interpretations, institutional caution, but they accumulate. And when you step back and look at the full picture, the narrative starts to crumble. 3 Atlas is either the most bizarre natural object in recorded history, or it is something else. And the fact that we're not allowed to seriously consider the second option is deeply troubling. Science is supposed to evaluate all hypotheses, not just the comfortable ones. And when scientists refuse to evaluate an hypothesis because it is uncomfortable, they are no longer doing science, they are doing politics. The coming weeks will be critical. As 3 Atlas approaches its closest point to Earth, more data will be collected. More observations will be made. And maybe, just maybe, we will get answers. Or maybe we will get more lies, more carefully worded statements that say nothing, more reassurances that everything is fine, more attacks on anyone who asks uncomfortable questions. The pattern is predictable, but predictability is not certainty, and certainty is not truth. What is true is that 3 Atlas is out there, real, observable, measurable, and profoundly strange. What is also true is that we have been lied to, not with malice, but with caution, with institutional self-preservation, with the kind of soft deception that makes everyone complicit and no one responsible. So, what should you do with this information? First, stay informed. Follow the data. Read the papers, not just the abstracts, not just the press releases, the actual papers with method sections and error bars and caveats. Second, ask questions. When someone tells you 3 Atlas is just a comet, ask them to explain the carbon dioxide ratio. Ask them to explain the nickel emissions. Ask them to explain the trajectory. Do not accept hand-waving. Demand specifics. Third, be skeptical of everyone, of NASA, of a vibe, of this video. Skepticism is not cynicism, it is intellectual hygiene. It is refusing to accept claims without evidence, and it is demanding that evidence meet the burden of proof. Fourth, be open-minded. If the data changes, change your mind. If new observations contradict old conclusions, update your beliefs. That is what rationality demands. And finally, keep watching. Because 3 Atlas is not done yet, and neither is this story. On December 19th, 2025, 3 Atlas will make its closest approach to Earth. Telescopes around the world will be watching. Citizen scientists will be observing. And somewhere in conference rooms and behind closed doors, decisions will be made about what data gets released and what stays hidden. This is the moment of truth. Not because 3 Atlas will do anything dramatic, it probably will not. But because this is when we will see whether transparency prevails or whether institutional control wins. Whether science operates in the open or behind curtains. Whether we get answers or more lies. The universe is vast, strange, full of things we do not understand. 3 Atlas is one of those things, and how we respond to it will define not just this moment, but how we approach the next anomaly and the one after that. Because 3 Atlas will not be the last. The Vera Rubin Observatory is coming online. Detection rates will increase. More interstellar objects will be discovered. And each one will be an opportunity. An opportunity to learn, to grow, to expand our understanding, or an opportunity to repeat the same mistakes. To dismiss, to downplay, to lie. The choice is ours, individuals, as a community, as a species. And that choice starts now, with 3 Atlas, with asking questions, with demanding honesty, with refusing to accept comfortable lies when uncomfortable truths are staring us in the face. 33 lies, 33 distortions. 33 ways we've been misled about 3 Atlas. Some deliberate, some accidental, some structural, but all consequential. Because when you control the narrative, you control the conversation. And when you control the conversation, you control the conclusions. 3 Atlas is not just a comet, it is a test. A test of our ability to confront the unknown, to question authority, to think critically, and to demand truth even when truth is uncomfortable. So far, we are failing that test. But it is not too late. The object is still here. The data is still being collected, and the truth, whatever it is still waiting to be discovered. All we have to do is look, really look, without bias, without fear, without the need for certainty that blinds us to possibility. Stay curious, stay skeptical, stay vigilant. And whatever you do, keep asking questions. Because the moment we stop asking is the moment we stop learning. And the moment we stop learning is the moment we become irrelevant. 3 Atlas is here. It is real. And it is not what they told you. What it actually is remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, we have been lied to. And it is time we stopped accepting those lies as truth. The cosmos does not care about our comfort. It does not care about our narratives. It simply is. Strange, beautiful, terrifying, and endlessly surprising. 3 Atlas is a piece of that cosmos. A visitor from the void. A mystery wrapped in ice and dust. And whether it is natural or artificial, it deserves better than the lies we have been told. It deserves investigation. It deserves transparency. And it deserves truth. We all do. The question is whether we are brave enough to demand it. December 19th is coming, 3 Atlas is coming, and the truth, whatever it may be, is waiting. Do not look away. Consider the antitail again. This forward-pointing jet has been one of the most debated features of 3 Atlas. Early images from Hubble showed a bright, elongated structure extending sunward. That is the opposite direction of a normal cometary tail. When this was first reported, Avi Lobo suggested it could be a stream of particles released ahead of the object, a debris field, or a navigational marker. Mainstream astronomers dismissed this as misunderstanding of cometry dynamics. They argued that what we were seeing was scattered light from dust in the coma, distorted by viewing angle. But subsequent observations from ground-based telescopes confirmed the jet was real. It was not an optical illusion. It was actual material being ejected toward the sun. At that point, the explanation shifted. It must be a dust fountain. Material ejected at high angles that appears to point forward due to perspective. But dust fountains do not maintain coherent structures over weeks. They disperse. 3 Atlas did not disperse. It maintained a tightly columnated jet that persisted through multiple observing sessions. That level of stability is inconsistent with chaotic outgassing. But admitting that would require considering mechanisms that are not natural. So the dust fountain explanation persists, even though it does not fit the data. This is gaslighting, institutional gaslighting. You see something anomalous, you report it. You're told it is not anomalous. You provide more data. You're told the data is being misinterpreted. You ask for clarification. You are told the explanation is complex and requires expert knowledge. You're not an expert, so you should trust the experts. But the experts are not providing explanations. They're providing reassurances. And there's a difference. Let us talk about the rotation rate again. 16.79 hours. That is fast for an object, potentially tens of kilometers. The rotational energy required to maintain that spin rate is substantial. And for a loose rubble pile, that energy would tear the object apart. Centrifugal force would overcome gravitational cohesion. The nucleus would fly apart. 3 Atlas has not flown apart. It has maintained structural integrity through perihelion, through intense solar heating, through thermal stresses that should have fractured any weak points. That suggests either the nucleus is much smaller than estimated, or it is much stronger. If it is smaller, the brightness estimates are wrong. If it is stronger, it is not a typical comet. Either way, something does not add up. But instead of confronting that contradiction, scientists focus on whichever interpretation is most convenient at the moment. When discussing size, they use the large estimate. When discussing rotation, they invoke strength. The object changes depending on what needs to be explained. That is not science. That is storytelling. Now, let us address the silences. What are we not being told? What data exists but has not been released? What observations were made but not published? These questions are impossible to answer definitively, but we can look at patterns. We can look at what happened with previous interstellar objects. With Oumuamua, critical data was withheld for months. Spitzer Space Telescope observations that constrained the object's size and reflectivity were not published until long after the discovery. By the time the data was released, Oumuamua had already left the solar system. The moment had passed, the public had moved on, and the data, when it finally came out, raised more questions than it answered. But by then, no one was paying attention. Is the same thing happening with 3I Atlas? A critical observation's being held back until after the object has left. Will we only get the full picture when it is too late to follow up? The December 19th flyby is significant. 1.8 astronomical units from Earth. That is close enough for detailed observations. Ground-based telescopes will have excellent viewing geometry. Space telescopes can track it continuously. This is the best opportunity we will ever have to study 3 Atlas. And if anything unusual happens, if the object changes course, if it releases smaller objects, if it does anything that contradicts the Comet hypothesis, we will see it. But we will only see it if we are looking, and if the data is shared. And if scientists are willing to report what they actually observe rather than what they think they should observe. There is also the question of biological contamination. If 3 Atlas is an interstellar object, it has spent billions of years traveling through space, exposed to cosmic rays, bathed in ultraviolet radiation, frozen to near absolute zero. Those conditions should sterilize any biological material. But what if they did not? What if 3A Atlas carries microbes from another world? Dormant spores, extriophils adapted to space. When 3 Atlas sheds material, that material disperses. Some of it will eventually fall to Earth, captured by our atmosphere, landing in oceans, on continents, and ecosystems. Panspermia, the idea that life can spread between worlds via comets and asteroids. It is a fringe hypothesis, but it is not impossible. And if 3 Atlas is carrying life, we would never know unless we specifically look for it. And no one is looking. This brings us to the ultimate question. What should we do? How should we respond to 3 Atlas? The scientific community has already chosen: observe, analyze, publish, move on. The public has chosen: scroll, click, forget. The institutions have chosen: downplay, reassure, control. But maybe we should choose differently. Maybe we should demand transparency. Maybe we should insist on complete data release. Maybe we should hold scientists accountable when their explanations do not fit the evidence. Because if we do not, if we just accept the narrative we are given, then we are complicit in our own ignorance. Science is supposed to be about truth, about following evidence wherever it leads, about questioning assumptions and testing hypotheses. But institutional science is about something else. It is about funding, about reputation, about consensus. And sometimes those priorities conflict with truth. When they do, truth loses. It's not because scientists are bad people, but because institutions are conservative. They resist change. They punish deviance. And they reward conformity. The result is a system that produces reliable results most of the time, but fails catastrophically when confronted with genuinely anomalous data. Data that does not fit existing models. Data that threatens established paradigms. Data like 3I Atlas. The comparison to Oumuamua is instructive. When Oumuamua was discovered in 2017, it was immediately recognized as anomalous. Its elongated shape, its unusual acceleration, its lack of a visible coma. All of these features sparked debate. Avi published a paper suggesting it could be a light sail, an artificial structure designed to harness solar radiation for propulsion. The response was immediate and hostile. Other astronomers published rebuttals. The media portrayed Loeb as a crank, and the consensus settled on a natural explanation. Mu was a comet made of hydrogen ice, a substance so exotic that it has never been observed in any natural object. But it was natural because the alternative was unthinkable. Now, 8 years later, we're watching the same script play out with 3I Atlas. The same anomalies, the same debates, the same attacks on anyone who questions the consensus. History is repeating. We are letting it happen. But there is a difference this time. 3 Atlas was discovered earlier in its passage. We have more time, more data, more opportunities for observation. Mu was discovered on its way out. 3 Atlas was discovered on its way in. That gives us a chance to do better, to be more rigorous, to demand more transparency, to ask harder questions. Whether we take that chance depends on whether we are willing to be uncomfortable, whether we are willing to sit with uncertainty, whether we are willing to admit that we might not know what 3 Atlas really is, and that not knowing is okay. What is not okay is pretending we know when we do not. What is not okay is lying to maintain comfort. So what are the implications if 3 Atlas is artificial? If it is a probe from another civilization, the first implication is that we are not alone. That is obvious. The second implication is more profound. If they can send probes here, we should be sending probes there. Technology exists, or could exist. The fact that we have not done it says more about us than about them. It says we are provincial, short-sighted, trapped in our own solar system by our own limitations. The third implication is that interstellar travel is possible. Not with humans, not with generation ships, but with probes. Unmanned, automated, capable of crossing the void and surviving for billions of years. That changes the equation. That makes the galaxy accessible. And if the galaxy is accessible, then we are late to the party. It's very late. The fourth implication is that someone is interested in us. 3 Atlas passed close to multiple planets: Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and it will pass close to Earth. That trajectory is not random. It is designed to observe, to gather data, to report back. We are being studied, and that should terrify and excite us in equal measure.